If a thief caught in the act of breaking in is beaten to death, it is not murder, unless it happens after sunrise, in which case it is murder. A thief must make restitution. So if he has nothing, he himself is to be sold to make good from the loss from the theft. If what is stole is found alive in his possession, he is to pay double, no matter whether it is an ox, donkey, or sheep. If a person causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed over, or lets his animal loose to graze in someone else's field, he is to make restitution from the best produce of his own field and vineyard. If a fire is started and spreads to thorns, so that stacked grain, standing grain, or a field is destroyed, the person who lit it must make restitution. If a person entrusts a neighbor with money or goods, and they are stolen from the trustee's house, then, if the thief's found, he must pay double. But if the thief is not found, then the trustee must state before God that he did not take the person's goods himself. In every case of dispute over ownership, whether of an ox, donkey, sheep, clothing, or any missing property, where one person says, "This is mine," both parties are to come before God, and the one whom God condemns must pay the other one double. If a person trusts a neighbor to look after a donkey, ox, sheep, or an animal, and it dies, is injured, or is driven away unseen, then the neighbor's oath before Adonai that he has not taken the goods will settle the matter between them. The owner is to accept it without the neighbor's making restitution. But if it was stolen from the neighbor, he must make restitution to the owner. If it was torn to pieces by an animal, the neighbor must bring it as evidence, and then he doesn't need to make good on the loss. If someone borrows something from his neighbor and it gets injured or dies, the owner not present, he must make restitution. If the owner was present, he need not make good the loss. If the owner hired it out, the loss is covered by the hiring fee. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price for her to be his wife. But if her father refuses to give her to him, he must pay the sum equivalent to the bride price for virgins. You are not to permit a sorcerer to live. Whoever has sexual relations with an animal must be put to death. Anyone who sacrifices to any god other than Adonai alone is to be completely destroyed. You must neither wrong nor oppress a foreigner living among you, for you yourselves were foreigners in the land of Egypt. You are not to abuse any widow or orphan. If you do abuse them in any way, and they cry out to me, I will certainly heed their cry. My anger will burn, and I will kill you with the sword. Your own wives will be widows, and your own children fatherless. If you loan money to one who my people is poor, you are not to deal with them as you would a creditor, and you are not to charge him interest. If you take your neighbor's coat as collateral, you are to restore it to him by sundown, because it is his only garment. He needs it to wrap his body. What else does he have in which to sleep? Moreover, if he cries out to me, I will listen, because I am compassionate. You are not to curse God, and you are not to curse a leader of your people. You are not to delay offering from your harvest of grain, olive oil, or wine. The firstborn of your sons are to be given to me. You are to do the same with your oxen and your sheep. It is to stay with its mother 7 days, and on the 8th day you are to give it to me. You are to be my specially separated people. Therefore you are not to eat the flesh torn by any wild animal in the countryside. Rather, throw it to the dogs. You are not to repeat false rumors. Do not join hands with the wicked by offering perjured testimony. Do not follow the crowd when it does what is wrong, and don't allow a popular view to sway you into offering testimony for any cause if the effect will be to pervert justice. On the other hand, don't favor a person's lawsuit simply because he is poor. If you come upon your enemy's ox or donkey straying, you must return it to him. If you see the donkey which belongs to someone who hates you lying down helpless under its load, you are not to pass him by, but you are to go help him free it. Do not deny anyone justice in his lawsuit simply because he is poor. Keep away from fraud, and do not cause the death of the innocent and righteous, for I will not justify the wicked. You are not to receive a bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and subverts the cause of righteousness. You are not to oppress a foreigner, for you know how a foreigner feels, since you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. For 6 years you are to sow your land with seed and gather in its harvest. But the 7th year are you to let it rest and life follow, so that the poor among your people can eat, and what they leave the wild animals in the countryside can eat. Do the same with your vineyard and olive grove. For 6 days you are to work, but on the 7th day you are to rest, so that your ox and donkey can rest, and your slave girl's son and the foreigners be renewed. Pay attention to everything I have said to you. Do not invoke the names of other gods, or let them be heard crossing your lips. 3 times a year you are to observe a festival to me. Keep the festival of Matzah for 7 days, as I ordered you. You are to eat matzah at the time determined by the month of Aviv, for it was in the month that you left Egypt. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Next, the festival of harvest, the first fruits of your efforts sowing in on the field, and the last, the festival of ingathering. At the end of the year, when you gather in the field the results of your efforts, 3 times a year, all your men are to appear before the Lord Adonai. You are not to offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, nor is the fat of the festival to remain all night until morning. You are not to bring the best first fruits. You are to bring the best first fruits of your land into the house of Adonai your God. You are not to boil a young animal in its mother's milk. I am sending an angel ahead of you to guard you on the way and bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him. Listen to what he says, and do not rebel against him, because he will not forgive any wrongdoings of yours, since my name resides in him. But if you listen to what he says and do everything I tell you, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and a foe to your foes. When my angel goes ahead of you and brings you to Emory, Hitti, Prizi, Canaani, Hivi, and Usi, I will make an end of them. And you are not to worship their gods, serve them, or follow their practices. Rather, you are to demolish them completely and smash their standing stones to pieces. You are to serve Adonai your God, and he will bless your food and water. I will take sickness away from you. In your land your women will not miscarry or be barren, and you will live out the full span of your lives. I will send terror of me ahead of you, throwing into confusion all the people to whom you come, and I will make all your enemies turn their backs on you. And I will send hornets ahead of you and drive out the Hivi, Canaani, and Hitti from before you. I will drive them out from before you in 1 year. Canaani in 1 year, which would cause the land to become desolate and the wild animals too many for you. I will drive them out from before you gradually, until you have grown in number and can take possession of the land. I will set your boundaries from the Sea of Suph to the Sea of Philistim, and from the desert to the Euphrates River, for I will hand the inhabitants of the land over to you, and you will drive them out from before you. You are not to make a covenant with them or with their gods. You are not to live in your land, otherwise they will make you sin against me by ensnaring you to serve their gods. To Moshe, Adonai said, Come up to Adonai, you, Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, and 70 of the leaders of Israel. Prostrate yourselves at a distance, while Moshe alone approaches Adonai. The others are not to approach, and the people are not to go up with him. Moshe came and told the people everything Adonai had said, including all the rulings. The people answered with one voice, We will obey every word Adonai has spoken. Moshe wrote down all the words of Adonai. He rose early in the morning, built an altar at the base of the mountain, and set upright 12 large stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent the young men and the people of Israel burnt offerings and sacrifice offerings of oxen to Adonai. Moshe took half of the blood and put it on the basins, and the other half of the blood he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it aloud, so that the people could hear, and they responded, Everything that Adonai has spoken we will do and obey. Moshe took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, This is the blood of the covenant which Adonai has made with you in accordance with all these words. Moshe, Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, and 70 of the leaders went up, and they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a sapphire stone, pavement as clear as the sky itself. He did not reach out his hand against these notables of Israel. On the contrary, they saw God even as they were eating and drinking. Adonai said to Moshe, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and stay there. I will give you the stone tablets of the Torah and the mitzvot I have written on them, so that you can teach them." Moshe got up, and Joshua, his assistant, and Moshe went up on the mountain to God. To the leaders he said, "Stay here for us until we come back to you. See, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a problem should turn to them." Moshe went up on the mountain, and the clouds covered the mountain. The glory of Adonai stayed on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And on the 7th day he called to Moshe out of the cloud. So the people of Israel, the glory of Adonai looked like a raging fire on top of the mountain. Moshe entered the cloud and went up on the mountain. He was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.